I'm going to tell you right now, Mets fans, this is not going to be a positive discussion. But how's it going, everybody? Thank you all so much for chiming in for the latest post-game show here on the channel. This is the first live show that we've done since around last week. I was away over the weekend, did some quick recaps when the Mets won their 2 out of 3 games against the Miami Marlins. And the Mets match up against Houston, this time back in town in Citi Field. What do? They do absolutely nothing. They are a no-show, an anemic offense for 2 straight days. That is the Mets, as they ended up losing Game 2 and getting swept for the second consecutive time in a week span to the Houston Astros, and now have lost 3 straight games for the first time this season. Today's total was 2-0, thanks to Drew Smith giving up a bomb to an absolute nobody, the man who got his first 2-hit game of the year, that being in Castro, for the Astros, who entered today's game with around 100 batting average, and also in runners in scoring position situations, entering this one, had 8 for 77 with 1 RBI entering there, that we saw in the top of the 9th, I should say, in which he had that 2-run shot, no doubter off Drew Smith, that ultimately gave the Mets the loss. Now, there are no positives to take away from today's game other than, yes, Taijuan Walker. Taijuan Walker had a phenomenal job today, having, I would say, his best start of the season. 7.1 innings pitched, folks, against this Houston Astros team, only surrendering 4 hits, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts on 93 pitches. Ty was cruising. His season ERA now is down to 2.72. He's the leading candidate by far out of the Mets rotation to be a potential all-star for his second consecutive year as a New York Met. Shout out to Ty. He worked masterfully. We'll be breaking down his arsenal here in a little bit on what was working right with the splitter, and also just his arsenal was truly something special. He has been lights out, giving you quality starts every 5th day for the majority of the season, and to come out against this Astros team going toe-to-toe with Justin Verlander, and in my eyes and the eyes of many, I did not believe that Ty lost the battle between the two, because if it wasn't for Drew Smith giving up that bomb, who knows how this game would have potentially turned out. The Mets offense is the reason why nothing happened here, folks, and I'm absolutely fuming. I know you guys are too, so continue to let me know your thoughts here in the live show. I'll be addressing them soon. I know that we have a lot of comments, questions, and concerns. If you're watching replay, let me know your thoughts down below, how you feel after another abysmal Mets loss and an abysmal Mets series, second straight series against the Astros. Thankfully, it's their last against Houston, but my, oh my, this team was just absolutely horrendous. I'm sorry. Runners in scoring position against the Marlins, they were nothing pretty. They weren't pretty at all against the Astros last week, and they proved to be exactly that again today. They only had a measly 2 hits, and one of those hits came with WardyNYM with a leadoff opposite field double. First pitch they saw for Verlander to start the game. The Mets had a couple guys on with less than 2 outs, and then when that happened, they were not able to score a run. Jeff McNeil was the final batter, and the strikeout there on a changeup, which was an over 10-pitch at-bat, a strong at-bat for McNeil and Verlander there in the first. But when the Mets didn't score there in the first, I was concerned because Verlander, who again is at the age of 39 and is absolutely cruising this year, 2 years removed now from the last time he pitched at the MLB level thanks to Tommy John surgery, comes back this year and is once again an absolute stud, is a Cy Young potential leading candidate in the AL there for the Houston Astros, and he was simply dominant. Verlander had 8 scoreless innings, only surrendering 2 hits and 1 walk. This Mets offense was pathetic, and by no means was I encouraged by the second half of the Mets lineup today. And again, folks, I do apologize if my visuals drop for a second. Just give it a minute. I've always had connection issues, still trying to work on those, but give it a second, they'll pick back up. But if you look at the Mets lineup today, especially when you're going through 6 through 9, it wasn't encouraging. You had Gourmet, who again has been in a little bit of a slump lately, but has made up for it with his glove, and he does actually deserve to be my top 5. I meant to put him there because he had elite defense. He had balls hit to him at third base, got the start over Escobar today at third, and literally had so many double play opportunities, which he was effortless. This man is a wizard there in the infield. We know that. He had literally 12 balls hit to him, was 1 ball away. If he played that, would have tied an MLB record for most times that a player at the third base position handled a ball in play in a game. So Gourmet was an absolute stud, over 3 with the bat. But again, with the offense, I'm not concerned there. It is when it comes to defense, he's an absolute stud. Offense, I'm always excited when we get from the Mets because he's still batting over 300 on the year. But you had Gourmet in the 6th spot. Dominic Smith, who's been an automatic out there in the 7th spot. Dom, it's not a matter on if he's going to be dealt this year, but a matter of when. Enter in Ciarte, who gets his first start of the year. I can't even criticize him too much because Ciarte had one of the 2 hits for the Mets today, his first hit as a New York Met today. Now we saw, folks, happen there, and it was a hilarious one because it was thanks to literally in the 5th a little half swing bunt that went a couple feet off of the mound there, not the mound, pardon me, and home plate to the left side opposite field. He legs it down first. That was the only other base runner felt like the Mets had this entire game besides a walk. So Inciarte, however, I didn't understand the pitching matchup by Buck. I got to be honest. Mark Canha, even though he's been slumping the past week, folks, what has Mark Canha done? He's been one of the best hitters out of all the Mets, and arguably their best hitter on paper, actually, for the Mets, in experience against Justin Verlander. Mark Canha has a over 900 OPS and over 300 average in his career against Justin Verlander, including a home run. But no, we're not going to start him today because he's in a little bit of a slump, and we have to do the righty-lefty matchup as if that did anything. Again, Verlander's a stud. I'm not surprised that the Mets got carved up, but I'm frustrated because we knew that when you looked at Valdez yesterday, who cruised against the Mets did not have the pitching. Cookie had another clunker that I'll be describing more on this series overall, folks, in my latest podcast for the Bleav in Queens pod with my co-host Joe Serralo. That'll be coming out early tomorrow, right around noon, I would say, but 6 a.m. If you guys want to check it out for the podcast form, we will be recording later today. So I'm not going to be deep diving everything from yesterday's game. I apologize, but I will. My podcast I'm recording later today and will be out early tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But when you look at what you had here with Inciarte, I didn't love the matchup there, and he didn't do anything special. Tomas Nido's an automatic out. That slider down away. Over 3. This Mets offense is absolutely pathetic, guys. If you look through the lineup, 2 measly hits. You're going to tell me that we're going to get 2 hits when Taijuan Walker is shutting the door down here on, yes, the Houston Astros. You know how difficult that is to do, to shut down the Astros? An offense that has been red hot. Like, literally, Yordan Alvarez didn't even get a hit today, folks. Yes, he had a bomb yesterday, but we finally get a Compton pitcher to match up against the Astros because all we had was a struggling Cookie and Trevor Williams the past 3 games that the Mets faced, that being in, the Astros. We finally get a Compton starter, someone who's been rolling in the right direction for the Mets, and they can't even put up a measly run, at minimum a run. 0 runs past 2 games. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than the fact that I'm not just discouraged. I think it's pathetic, and this team needs to be better. It's simple as that. No, do I think the sky's falling? No, of course not. I'm not concerned in the long run for the Mets, but there are obvious flaws that they currently have with this team. It's led by the bullpen alone. Chasen Shreve, why the hell is this man still on the Mets from yesterday? Shouldn't have even been on the Mets after his last outing, which coincidentally enough was against the Astros in Houston, where he blew that game open in one of those 2 games. He was absolutely pathetic yesterday. Then we have Drew Smith. Drew, who's been giving up the long ball as of late after really having a strong start to the year. First month and a half, Drew Smith was basically unhittable. Since then, he struggled with his control and has been giving up home runs what feels like every other outing. He gives up a bomb to an absolute nobody in Castro in this one, folks. And that's your X factor. The bullpen needs to be addressed at some point. I fully expect the Mets to as we get closer to the trade deadline. But at what point do the Mets really say, okay, now we're going to start to make moves, right? I don't think they're going to act drastic. I'm not expecting that one bit. But this team, man, this was frustrating as all hell because this is a Mets team that all of June, and a really tough schedule in June, I'd like to add, this is on paper, you can argue, the second hardest schedule the Mets have had all year long month-wise. You can even argue that's the first hardest month-wise. Other than that, you also have in August. August is going to be a killer for the Mets. They face the Braves a boatload of times. They play the Dodgers, the Yankees. August is on paper, if not the most difficult, then close to the most difficult month of the season for the Mets. Thankfully, in July, they have right around their easiest or second easiest thus far. But the point is that the Mets, even with all the injuries that they have endured, guys, and I want to know how your thoughts are on this. Again, continue smashing that like and subscribe on. Really do appreciate it, folks. I know that, again, this is not a positive Mets stream, but we got a lot of rant about, and I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm going to be completely looking away to the Mets and how pathetic that they have been against the Astros in the 4 games. And don't get me wrong, the Astros are a great team. But looking further on this team right now, folks, with the offense, with the bullpen, this is stuff that you have to wonder when it's going to get addressed, right? And I am curious to see when it will start to. But man, oh man, I mean, this was disgusting. There's no other way to look at this game and say Taijuan Walker pitched a masterclass, did his best Jacob deGrom impression where the Mets couldn't get enough from him. David Pearson just got hung out to dry in the series finale, a day game no less, against the Marlins a couple days ago in Miami. He couldn't get more than a couple runs from the Mets offense. I mean, this offense all month long, folks, even with the injuries that they've sustained to Alonso for a couple games, to Marte, and when Lindor was out for 1 or so. Even with all these injuries, folks, this Mets offense, if you look at their numbers throughout the entire month of June, have been simply incompetent against good pitchers. We're talking about some of the better ones in the game. The Mets haven't been absolutely pathetic against good teams above 500, but when looking at the broader spectrum of, okay, pitchers that are, say, among the elite in baseball, when you look at the Dodgers series, when you look at the Giants series, when you look at even teams that had lesser pitchers than what we saw with the Astros, they just can't hit, okay? And even without having McNeil from the previous series, it doesn't change the fact that Alonso needs to be better. Marte needs to be better, even though Marte had a great game yesterday. Lindor needs to be better. Canna, Escobar, who's been anemic this entire year, feels like. These guys need to step up to the plate, and they're not doing it right now. And they're not doing it against teams that they know they're going to have to do it against come playoff time. So if there's one positive that I would say to take away from this, folks, if I'm being completely blunt, outside of stellar pitching by Taijuan Walker, that cannot be underestimated, guys. Ty had an absolutely beautiful start, and he deserves to be a potential all-star starter for representing the Mets in this year's All-Star game. That's how good he's been for the majority of the season. But outside of that starter, folks, the Mets, this offense needs to be better. It's absolutely pathetic. The bullpen, my goodness gracious, God forbid, if you have a reliever come in with a couple guys stranded from the previous starter, it's almost an automatic that they're going to give up runs there. Wow. Edwin Diaz was a stud. He got the final 2 outs there in the 8th for the Mets, got 2 strikeouts after having a 2-on, no-out jam. Love that Edwin's been a beast. Drew Smith, though, I'm having my concerns with. I mean, when you were chasing Shreve is not an MLB caliber pitcher right now. Joely Rodriguez is a coin flip as to what you're going to get from him. And again, not everything's been his fault. Adam Ottavino, I'm not going to gripe about him for the home run against the Marlins. Seriously, Ottavino has been one of the best relievers the Mets have had. If you think otherwise, then clearly you aren't paying attention. There has not been enough good quality from the Mets, from their bullpen over this past month when looking back now, and now looking at this offense. The offense needs to be better, folks. It's as simple as that. Even if this is going to be a low-scoring game, at least score a run or two. My goodness gracious. This is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I shouldn't say that I'm surprised because, look, the Mets had Framber Valdez, who's an absolute stud and a southpaw. Did I think that matchup was going to benefit the Mets? No, I did not. I would have been grateful if the Mets could have scored a couple runs off of Valdez in, say, 6-7 innings. But no, this man absolutely shoved yesterday, was perfect every single inning. Mets could do nothing. And then today for the Mets, Justin Verlander, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. I'm not surprised that the Mets have gone carved up, but the Mets, at least so far throughout the majority of the season, have proven that their offense can overcome these adversities. But June has definitely hit them like a truck from the offensive side of things, and it's something that they need to be better at and take advantage of the opportunities given to them against lesser opponents starting Friday against the Texas Rangers, folks. When you're facing the Rangers, when you're facing the Cincinnati effing Reds, when you're facing more of the Marlins, when you're facing the Cubs, you cannot lose any of those series, okay? Especially, I know it's early on, and look, the Braves, even in a worst case scenario where the Braves overtake the Mets in first, I'm not concerned about the standings right now. I'm looking at it down the stretch. This is a marathon, not a sprint for a reason. So no one should be freaking out as if the Mets can't get back to first in the worst case scenario where they lose first, say if the Braves continue to roll and the Mets continue to play just above 500 ball. The Mets are going to end June with an above 500 record, but only by 2 games. I mean, it's not impressive. The Mets won 13-11 here in June, folks. That isn't encouraging for me. I'm glad that, again, they weathered the storm a lot. I have to keep in mind that they've dealt with a lot of injuries. So a lot of these blown out games have been with subpar pitching. Cookie being flat, not having his stuff, like not having a splitter yesterday. Also looking at the case of, okay, Trevor Williams, David Pearson, they haven't been studs every single outing for us. And even Chris Bassett has been up and down that we saw earlier in the month of June, 1,000%. Mid-May to the halfway mark of June, Chris Bassett was not a good pitcher for the Mets. He's changed stuff since then. So I'm well aware that the Mets are going to get better. Mad Max is going to be back starting Monday more than likely because he has his rehab start, his final one tonight there for Double-A Baines and Rebel Ponies. Jacob deGrom had his 3rd live BP, and his next step, which will be announced tomorrow, is more than likely going to be a rehab start, which will be the beginning of 3 to 5 rehab starts before he returns, which I'd imagine is on pace to be either right before or right after this year's All-Star break. And then you have, Jankowski, May, they're progressing well. That's awesome to see. But in the meantime, this Mets team, the offense, it needs to be better, okay? The biggest thing that I've griped about, folks, and I wasn't concerned about it earlier in the month as I am now, even against great pitching, is the fact that the Mets, when they have been losing games, they've been getting blown out more often than not. Yes, today's loss to the Astros 2-0 was anything but a blowout. But the point is that you can tell that the Mets offense has gone rattled early when they have dealt with early deficits. Cookie giving up 4 earned runs in his past 2 starts in the first inning alone, right? When Trevor Williams gives up a couple early on, when Chris Bassett gives up a couple early on. The Mets have not been able to handle that adversity nearly to the same degree as they have in the first 2 months of the season. So now it's a matter of combating it. And again, it is good. And I said, if there's any positive other than Taijuan Walker, I will say it's good knowing that the Mets are having these adversities now. I'd much rather it be a situation where we know very well what the Mets need to do in addressing this team going forward now versus, say, down the stretch after the trade deadline and everything falls completely flat on its face. So thankfully, the Mets are in a spot we're not even at the halfway mark of the season, close to at least, where they can really garner, understand who should be in this bullpen, who should not be, who should they address on that front. One, looking at the DH position and the offense as a whole. Who deserves to stay on this club? Who should be parted with? And the starting rotation. How much depth should the Mets add with the rotation, even in the best scenario where both Scherzer and DeGrom are back with a couple weeks prior to the deadline? It's great that we are understanding these things now, but it doesn't change the fact that when you do not score one measly run in 2 effing games against the Houston Astros, there's no denying that I'm going to come out guns a-blazing. I'm absolutely pissed off, and rightfully so. And I'm going to continue to go on further, folks. Look at this Mets offense. I mean, other than having Nimmo get that base hit that we saw there in the first, that was literally the only base hit they had today. NCR take out a fluke little bunt single. Nice play by him, but again, he just hustled down the line. He's Travis Jankowski's replacement right now until Jankowski's back in this lineup, and I don't mind that. He's a great glove, great speed, but literally has little to no offensive upside. This Mets team needs to be better. The depth needs to be better, and that's all I got to say. They need to absolutely rake against the Rangers. They need to rake against the Reds in Cincinnati, arguably the best hitters park in baseball outside of Coors Field. And when they play Chicago, when they play more the Marlins, you need to make sure that you, if you can, try to start sweeping series, folks. It's very much doable, and that is how a Mets team that has dealt with some ruts of late offensively can get out of those ruts by facing lesser opponents. Just like what the Braves did when they won like 13, 14 straight games against all subpar teams, they continue to ride that momentum and have played good baseball for the most part against more competent teams since. And the Giants and the Dodgers, and now playing the Phillies, who don't have a bullpen. So I won't be surprised if the Braves win again tonight. But point is that it's good that we're learning this now, that we've learned throughout the year, but it's good that we're understanding this at the halfway mark of the season, and that the Mets, again, have on paper a very easy schedule, something that should benefit them, folks. The Mets play 17 teams below 500 in the month of July, and they play 8 teams above 500. So a total, you see there's 17 games against below 500 clubs, 8 games against teams above 500 in the month of July. That's where you need to execute. That's where you need to start to get your momentum. So then when the really troubling and really concerning month of August comes with that brutal schedule, that's where you have to come in and ride that wave of momentum that you hopefully had throughout the month of July, and whatever moves the Mets potentially make leading up to the deadline, which of course is in the first week of August. I believe it's August 2nd or something. That's where they can hopefully ride more momentum. I'm not concerned about this Mets team in the sense that I'm not concerned that long-term with them right now, but I am concerned with what I'm currently seeing, and it needs to change. The offense needs to be better. The bullpen needs to be better. Chasen Shreve, why the hell is this man, again, still in this Mets bullpen? I wish I knew. I genuinely wish I knew why Chasen Shreve was still a New York Met at this juncture, because throwing him out yesterday after Cookie not even going 5 innings felt like you were waving the white flag, and surely that's exactly what transpired. And this is not on the pitching. I'd like to make that clear. The offense has been absolutely abysmal, because when Mets are getting blown out, they've had no offensive upside for the most part. Feels like 9 out of 10 games when the Mets have been getting blown out in the month of June, they've had little to no offense to back it. And again, this is not to discredit the Justin Verlanders of the world, the Franmir Valdez's, and other stud pitchers that the Mets have faced here in the month of June. But still, this Mets offense is good. It is very good. And they need to act better than what they have been to this point. I'm confident that they will. But man, oh man, this series really pissed me off. I was hoping at minimum a split, and God forbid they could score a run for us fans. They were not able to do it. They need to bounce back. I expect them to, and I expect them to roll here in July. But man, oh man, it's just frustrating, because even in the scenario where the Mets roll in July, then you're going to have those arguments. Okay, how can the Mets do against the top dogs, fellow top dogs in the league, right? And that's something that they're not going to be able to prove too much here in the month of July, because they have what? They have a 5-game series in July, I Bleav, or is that? I think it's in July, maybe August, July, against the Braves. But outside the Braves, the Mets basically don't play under any other strong team that's above 500 for the most part in July. So the Mets, even in best case scenario where they're rolling in July, they're still going to need to prove it to us fans that they can continue to roll against the better teams in baseball once we get to that really tough schedule in August. Then things line up for them quite a bit in September to wrap up the season. So Moral of the story, this was frustrating. When you look at the Mets lineup today, folks, Brandon Nimmo 1 for 4 with the Devils. Charlie Marte 0 for 4. Francisco Lindor 0 for 4. Pete Alonso 0 for 2 with a walk. Jeff McNeil 0 for 3 with 2 strikeouts. Luis Guillorme 0 for 3. Dominic Smith 0 for 3. Ender Inciarte with a bunt single 1 for 3. Tomas Nido 0 for 3. Needs to be better. Needs to be better, folks. And I normally, for post-game shows like this, guys, I normally break it down thoroughly based on the inning. I know that we saw there what happened in the 8th between Alvarez and Pena that collided after a Dom Smith flyout there in left field. They both exited the game. I hope they're okay. Alvarez looked like he was shook up a bit. Might have a concussion. I hope he doesn't. I hope that they're going to be okay. Alvarez, who again got shut down by Taijuan Walker today. Unfortunately, the Mets were not able to take advantage of shutting down the best hitter, really hottest hitter in baseball right now. But I hope, again, Alvarez and Pena are okay. That was one of the big things that happened today. But other than that, guys, there just is not much to break down on this one. Ty was able to get out of multiple jams in this game when there was a couple guys on thanks to some amazing double plays, all turned by Luis Guillorme for the most part. But outside of that, very little positives to talk about, guys. So again, guys, if you have specific comments, questions, or concerns that you would like me to start addressing here in the post-game show, I would certainly do that, folks. Again, I know that this is not an encouraging post-game show. I know that this is not something that normally you guys want to listen to, me just ranting. I didn't want to. I was going to do a rant stream last night after the Mets got blown out 9-0. I said I'm going to wait because, again, the Mets had their day game today. So depending on how they do, will help further garner my thoughts. But I said if the Mets don't show up offensively again today, I'm going to rant regardless of the fact that they're facing Verlander. And I am surely going to rant and break down more about this series in further depth in my latest podcast. I will be recording later tonight with Joe Sorello, that being for the Bleav in Queens podcast. You guys have been with endless support, so thank you guys so much for that. Pod, again, will be out around 6 a.m. for wherever you get your podcast audio-wise. When it comes to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all that fun stuff. But then the video format will be posted as a premiere, which is like a live stream format, even though I'm not actually live tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And I am hoping to have a video out later tomorrow evening as well regarding more trade targets for the Mets. So stay tuned for all that. But again, in case you're wondering why I didn't deep dive more on the Mets loss yesterday, than what I can potentially do right now, that all goes in hand with, again, our podcast will be happening later tonight. So continue to let me know your thoughts here in the comments, folks. Continue smashing that like and subscribe button. I greatly appreciate it. Stay tuned for more great Mets content. Now I'm going to start to answer all your comments, questions, and concerns. But for people on replay, this is where I'll be cutting things off. So guys, again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you feel after an abysmal Mets loss like this, an abysmal series? Do you think that the sky's falling? By no means do I think the sky's falling. I think that would be the silliest thing to do. I do think, however, what deserves to be acknowledged is rightful criticism. And just like a normal 162 season, guys, you're going to have your ebbs and flows. You're going to have your highs and your lows. And there's no denying that the past week of baseball for the Mets has very much been a low. You could argue it's been the lowest point that they've had all season long. So can it get much worse than this? Hopefully not. Again, we'll soon find out. Let me know your thoughts down below. Smash those buttons. People on replay, I'm going to cut things off here. But for people in the live show, let's start to answer those questions.